these wrecks before we get the ROV in the water, and then temperature, salinity, conductivity measurements that tell us about the ocean chemistry, as well as weather sensors that allow us to record not only the real-time weather information, but also transmit those weather observations back to shore so they can help weather forecasting groups in NOAA and elsewhere improve their forecast. So it's really, we're seeing one of the tasks that it's accomplishing now, but it's behind the scenes. The ship is doing dozens of operations simultaneously, all made possible by the Corps officers, the NOAA Corps officers, and the department's deck engineering stewards and deck engineering and stewards. It's just a well-run machine that allows us to do really, really great work that you're seeing here.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Chris is saying. The Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration team has been working with the crew of the Nancy Foster, not just for this expedition, but also in preparing for the expedition. You know, before we brought all of the equipment on board, we needed to work with their deck crew and their officers to make sure that we had the deck layout properly planned, that we had the equipment we needed to mount everything to the back deck, that the working spaces on the inside of the ship were going to be appropriate for our control room setup. And I can tell you that the ship's crew, everyone on board, has been an absolute pleasure to work with and has been essential in allowing us to carry out this mission successfully.
Okay. Do we have any archaeologists on the line that can tell us what that is? Or do we already know?
Where are we on the ship now? Are we still up in the bow?
Actually, Roland, do you mind putting the HiPAC screen up on feed 2 maybe? And then you can see exactly where we are on the wreck, kind of in the middle.
Wow. I don't know what that is. It's fascinating. Obviously some sort of machinery, but I don't know if it was part of the cargo or if it was had to do with loading material on board. Is Chris still on the line?
Yeah, I was hoping. I wanted Chris Sutherland also. Maybe we shouldn't let more than one archaeologist go eat fried chicken at a time.
I don't know what that is. It's interesting, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, interesting. I'll point out here that this view is providing us with something that we're not able to get by doing our scuba surveys, and that is the enhanced light that is giving us the real characteristics of and the contrast of the fish here. So we're seeing small vermilion snapper, also called beeliners, and they're mixed in with tomtates that have the black. And so the pinkish color are the vermilion snappers, and the tomtates have the black spot or black tail. It's very often when we're swimming around these wrecks that we will encounter very large schools of tomtates and vermilion snapper, and because the color red dissipates as you go down in the water column, we're never able to make out that red pattern, and instead are trying to make out characteristics of the shape of the fish. And when there's thousands of them swimming around you, it just becomes very challenging to do that. And being able to shine the light basically on these critters is giving us some really good identifications of exactly what they are and the proportions within these mixed schools.
And the ROV team, it seems like we're starting to pan up into the water column, and I'm curious if we can maybe on feed 2 replace the HiPAC feed with some of the broad perspective images. We're particularly curious to see if the behavior of the fish we're seeing may start to change soon, because we're getting into the dusk period, and oftentimes a lot of the fish will exhibit different behaviors. They kind of dart up towards the surface or swim more quickly, and we call that crepuscular behavior. And Chris Taylor, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what the viewers should be looking for that would help indicate this behavioral change? I think Chris may have needed to go get his own fried chicken. But we'll point out that sort of behavior.
And you too. Interesting. I think I got my greasy finger from the fried chicken slipped off the viewport. I think that's a great view, man. I love those broad views and the butterfly fish right there in the center. The pair of them actually swimming around that boiler. Beautiful. Crepuscular behavior. It's this change from day to night in the behavior of the fish. Each of these fish are adapting to a different feeding behavior, normally related to a feeding behavior, and it's common for us to see fish move up and away from the wreck, up into the water column to feed on plankton. And some of the smaller fish will do that because as you get into diminishing light during the dusk time period, that reduces the visibility and the detection by large predators. And so there's this sweet spot in the crepuscular period where we think the prey fish can go up in the water column and feed relatively safely from the predators like the jacks and the barracuda that are very much relying on that visual sense and the light to be able to detect their prey. And so there's this really sometimes very short window of time where you'll see schools of fish rising up very quickly into the water column to feed and then return back down the wreck to form these resting schools during the nighttime and then during the day. And we're seeing that here too. The tomtates and the Brazilian snapper are very much tied to that structure. And maybe as we move into this further into the dusk time period, we'll make out those schools occupying more of the water column. A great view on feed 2 of that imaging sonar again. That's showing us the boiler. One is laying on its side, and one is laying right side up or upside down. I guess it's just really cool contrast with what we're seeing on the camera versus what's on the.
I'm wondering if the ROV team can get a close-up of the hole in the boiler that has the hard white coral in its right-hand section.
Catch that,
just
Todd?
past it.
Okay.
And some close-ups of the pair of butterfly fish would be really helpful too.
And our video engineer, Roland Bryant, is pointing out on feed 2 for a moment we have an image of our multi-beam sonar mounted to the front of Yogi up, and it gives you some really detailed information about the objects that we're looking at in the sonar.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you see the boiler that's right up close to us here, and then off to the left, it's out of the field of view on feed 1, the other boiler that's laying on its side. But then we're seeing a very large school of fish that's behind that boiler that's outside of that. It's beyond the field of view. Again, it looks like it's about 10 meters away, which is beyond our visibility under the current conditions.
And I'll just point out briefly, we mentioned it before on previous days, but obviously we're seeing a lot of really colorful animals and creatures on our wreck site today, fish and coral, and other encrusting creatures on the debris here. And, we outfit the ROVs with LED lights that actually simulate sunlight. And the reason for that is, that we want to provide as accurate of information as possible, and so those lights are calibrated so that we get accurate color representations of all these creatures. So if we were to actually take a sample and bring them up to the surface and observe them under sunlight at the surface, they should closely match the colors that we're seeing on the video feed, which is important for documentation but also for scientific purposes.
This view is just beautiful, and I think it's a really interesting example of how some of the animals, like that hard white coral that we're seeing in the upper section of that boiler, can provide structure that fish associate with. So we see some small fish that are associated with it.
Obviously a really tight zoom here. And Roland, what is the
It really is.
what is the optical zoom on this camera? Do you know? We'll have to look that up.
That is really cool. Dan, can you talk about so we have smaller ROVs that we use for some of our research in shallower water, and it's a pretty simple unit. A few thrusters and some joysticks up on the surface and some cameras. We are never able to maintain the stability that you guys can with Yogi. Can you talk a little bit about the technology on Yogi, or is it just really sure-handedness by the pilots?
Well, I'd say it's a combination. Got our expert pilot, Todd Gregory, flying Yogi right now, and he's very good at keeping the vehicle stable for these tight shots. But, yeah, there obviously is an advantage to having a dual-body system versus a single-body system, which it sounds like that's what you operate with your other smaller ROVs. So with the dual-body system, we have two vehicles. We have what we call a camera platform named Guru that's hanging off the back of the ship via a steel cable, and it's essentially a clump weight, though an intelligent one. It's got its own cameras and sensors and sonars, and also has a main HD camera on board. And Guru just hangs off the back of the ship and looks down at Yogi with its camera. And Guru absorbs the motion of the ship. Obviously, today's pretty calm, actually, but in bigger conditions, the ship is heaving and rolling and pitching, and Guru helps to decouple all of that ship motion from the main ROV that's down at the bottom, and that's Yogi. So Guru and Yogi are connected by a 100-foot long, what we call a neutral tether, that transmits all the power and communications back and forth between the vehicles and the ship. But Yogi is purposefully flown underneath of Guru in a way that keeps that neutral tether between them slacked, so that as Guru moves around, Yogi is stable on the bottom. So that's kind of one of the advantages of having a dual body system. The other is that that third person perspective essentially of Yogi on the bottom is gives another perspective from which to fly Yogi by. And Guru also has its own light bank, so it can help to illuminate the area around Yogi for situational awareness. So a lot of advantages to the dual body system.
Yeah, thanks for that description. I'm just curious, does it have a Doppler velocity logger on it too that you can use to stabilize in things like currents, or is the pilot really moving the joystick around to sort of keep the ROV in one spot?
Yeah, so Yogi does have a DVL on board, and that's one of the sensors that's used to use what we call auto functions. So there are 3 auto functions on Yogi, one being auto depth or auto altitude. So auto depth will use the depth sensor and try to and use vertical thrust to try to maintain a constant depth regardless of pilot input or vehicle motion. It also has auto altitude, so there's an altimeter pointing downward from Yogi and tracking the bottom. And as you fly forward, there's an auto function that'll try to maintain an altitude, a set altitude above the seafloor. There's also an auto heading function that basically uses a compass on Yogi to try to maintain which direction Yogi is facing. And then there's also an auto XY, what we call auto XY function, which uses the DVL and tries to keep Yogi, motionless over the seafloor that it's detecting. So the pilot, part of piloting is learning when to use those auto functions, when it's appropriate, when the sensors will track well, when they'll be, if you have a lot of current, it can be hard to hold position in a stable manner. So it's understanding those functions and when to use them in combination with the deft hand on the joystick, as you mentioned.
Yeah, very good point. Autopilot is not really auto anything.
Right.
You have to know when to turn it on.
Exactly. It's a tool in the tool belt, but the vehicle does not drive itself.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, feed 2, the broad, again, I just get drawn to the broad views that, in contrast to the up and close, although that is a great a great image of a delicious looking lionfish. We only had a little sampler for that to bring up, but up the surface. I know that's not the goal of this, but they are a tasty fish.
Yeah, so I just want to remind everyone, you can feel free to post your questions in the YouTube chat. We are monitoring that on board, and we will try to answer your questions on air as they come in.
You know, and I'll bring for the audience that's not paying attention to the chat. There was a question about why do they call those whips that are in front of us, the white sea whips, are actually a type of coral called black coral. They're in a group of coral species. And someone asked, why are they called black coral? And it's because when they were first discovered, it was definitely not using cameras, like colored cameras on an ROV like this. We've only had colored images like this over the past few decades. And so it was actually samples that were brought up from the bottom, and once all the polyps died, it just left the spine of the coral colony that was black. And so they named it such and thought that was what they looked like underwater, until now we see something very different here. Another type of soft coral here. Not sure the species of that one, but if we can get a still frame of that, that'd be a great image to share with our coral specialists. Great shot.
Great, yeah, and we might request maybe a 4K image of this for more resolution when looking at these images later.
Oh, indeed. Please. Yeah, I think getting all this information, we're getting sidebar chats in our Google chat from our NOAA accounts. We're getting chat comments from the audience members here. And this is really what this telepresence mission is all about. We would never be able to fit all of us on this mission to be able to do this level of interpretation, to be able to adapt and react, to get the high-quality images like this to help us identify these coral species that we're seeing on this wreck. And so this really is bringing you all to the science. And so we appreciate the contributions through chat, the 40 or so people that are joining us, watching on feed 1 and feed 2. This is a great dive that we didn't think we were going to be able to do because of the heavy currents that the ROV team and the ship had experienced earlier on in the day. So this is just a golden opportunity for us today.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been possible without the adaptability and flexibility of the science team as well, and helping us identify an area that we thought might have less current, and balancing that with priority wreck sites like the one that we're on today. So we're so glad we were able to find a site that worked for us in terms of current, but also you all in terms of the science and archaeology. And just to speak to that telepresence capability and, how much it can add to an expedition like this, it's exactly like you said, Chris. Not everyone would be able to, or maybe not everyone would want to come out to sea for weeks at a time. And so the telepresence capability allows us to bring these images from the seafloor to viewers all around the world with minimal delay, just on the order of seconds. So we're so happy that there are, so many people watching right now and utilizing that telepresence capability. And it's a model that we're very used to using on NOAA's ship Okeanos Explorer. The GFOE team there operates the deep submergence vehicles Deep Discoverer, or D2, and Sirius, which those vehicles are rated to about 20,000 feet depth, which covers about 98% of the seafloor. Here we're using our smaller ROV system, Guru and Yogi, similar two-body system, a bit smaller and rated to about 1,500 meters, or maybe about 5,000 feet. So a little bit smaller, only able to go, that depth rather than the full 20,000 feet of the other system. But obviously a very nimble system that allows us to utilize ships of opportunity like this and come out on the Nancy Foster for this expedition before we pack up the equipment and send it home. And
I wonder if the archaeologists could comment.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see? I do
also
see
looks
that
like
shark tooth.
there's a shark tooth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pilot.
I wonder if we can zoom into that. And I think what Chris was going to ask, what is that we're looking at? Is that a contemporary object or?
Yeah, the pilot's got eyes on the shark tooth. We'll work to stabilize and get us a view of that. Good spot.
Great. Yeah, it's like just finding a needle in a haystack there, guys.
Yeah.
It's hard to make out if that's like a wheel or something that was part of the mechanics of the boiler. If it's something that's just part of the wreck that just sort of fell on it, some later point. I mean, that shark tooth can't be more than an inch long, and so to be able to get an image like this zoomed in this far is pretty remarkable.
Great. Well, I'm so glad we were able to find that. We do have a question in the chat that I want to get to really quick. Someone is asking, what kind of schooling do you need to be an ROV pilot? And to briefly answer that question, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Lars Murphy, who you heard on this channel earlier, but is now sitting in the navigator seat.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dan. That's a tough question. An ROV pilot, there's a lot of different backgrounds and roles you can come from. This field is still relatively new, even though ocean exploration has been around for as far back as you can imagine. We have backgrounds in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, data science, software, hardware. We have scientists, biologists. It's a pretty wide field, and we kind of pluck from other engineering fields and try and get people that are capable of learning many different talents to be able to come out here. With a small crew, you really need to be a jack of all trades to be able to hop in and operate a system like we're doing now. So the ability to learn and the interest of being out here are really the two main things that we look for in ROV pilots, and then an engineering and technology background is also very helpful. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Lars.
Yeah, this is Chris Taylor. I just want to add on to that what Lars just said, that how we conduct these missions relies on a diversity of backgrounds and expertise. And I think what we're doing right now is archaeological study, but an archaeologist is not operating the ROV or capturing the video or managing the data or conveying this. When we're done with this dive, there's going to be a rapid production and a beautiful synopsis video that'll be posted through social media. So there's communications aspects and art presented to it too. The whole sort of field of ocean science, whether it be archaeology or ecology, really does require a broad and diverse team, and this really emphasizes it. We come from a variety of backgrounds, but I think we all come together here or remotely come together to be able to conduct this mission. Try to find common goals and objectives, and we're sure capturing it right now, being able to study both the ecology and archaeology of the wreck of the Malchace.
Chris, did you see that possible soapfish? It didn't look quite like, oh, there it is again. Would the ROV team be able to zoom into that spot with a lot of fish? There's a brown fish with some white spots on it that we'd love to get a closer look at, if feasible.
Did you catch that, pilot?
Is it underneath that structure there? Sort of in the middle of the field of view, Avery, or now moving to the right?
It's right by the butterfly fish. Okay, yeah. See it right in the middle?
No, I'm so focused on the goatfish right now.
Horizontal. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, there you go.
And it's gone.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Thank you.
If we see it again, we'll take note and try to get a zoom.
Got a little stage right there. That's okay, buddy.
Well, the lights and the whirring motors from the ROV are probably a little bit intimidating, I'm sure.
Can imagine the brightness of the sun coming at you. Yeah, we're definitely losing light down there. I know you guys have adjusted the illumination on the LEDs on the ROV, but it's 5:40 local time, Eastern time here from the coast of North Carolina as we're conducting an ROV survey of the wreck of Malchace. We're transitioning into what we would call the crepuscular period, so we're transitioning from the day to night period. We're looking up at the water column now, make some observations, see if fish are moving up into the water column for schooling and for feeding, but just taking it as much as we can in the time that we have available here to conduct this survey, gathering information on both the archaeology and history of this wreck and the natural resources, the fish and the fish communities and the invertebrates that are calling this wreck habitat and home.
And the view on feed 2 in the upper right is absolutely stunning right now with the colors that we can see, the reds and pinks and purples juxtaposed with the blue background of the ocean and some of the fish that are very close to the structure, as well as some that just a few minutes ago were in the background, larger fish, and then some were in the water column above too. Just such an incredible variety of life calling this shipwreck home.
So I thought those were yellow goatfish, Avery, the yellow ones in the middle there, but I'm not seeing. Oh yeah, I'm seeing whiskers on them now.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah, I'm going to check those. Those are different than the ones that we saw earlier.
Yeah,
these ones seem to be a little bit more red.
Yeah.
The pilot has identified some holes in the hull here, and Chris Southerly is back in the room, and he's talking with the pilot. I think he's going to jump on momentarily and talk about these.
Great.
Hey, Chris, do you want to jump on?
Rescued by an archaeologist.
Chris Taylor says he's been rescued by an archaeologist, so the floor is yours.
We were going to start making stuff up.
I say, hey, Chris, it's Chris. I'm back. Had just had an amazing meal in the ship's galley. So, what were the questions that you guys had?
They want to know about the holes that you're seeing here.
Oh, the holes in the plates they're probably from the riveting of the plates to the frames, more than likely, and you get a differential corrosion from the bolts or the rivets versus the plates themselves. So in a lot of cases, the rivets will degrade faster and rust out and fall out. It's also one of the reasons that the plating will start peeling off of the frames on the wreck as well.
Chris, do you think this is a main part of the hull? Are we looking at sort of a inner structure or decking, or is it just so is just so destroyed that it's just sort of twisted metal. It's hard to tell.
Like I said, from the general shape, this is probably part of the exterior hull that has collapsed in. So we're actually the pieces that we had that we were just passing over look to be part of the exterior hull of the ship, and then so you're seeing kind of the thickness of the plating there in the top of the screen, and then below that we're starting to see some of the inner structure that's collapsed in on itself, and looks in some cases to have been melted as well. So it could have been some of the fire and destruction from that, providing some of the warping and the melting of the metal on the interior inside the hull. So yeah, looks like maybe some piping from the steam machinery possibly, or could be part of maybe one of the rails up on the ship itself. It's hard to tell when it starts to collapse in on itself like this. It's one of the real benefits that we will have from the being able to go over the site so thoroughly with the ROV is the benefit of the photogrammetry and being able to mosaic this image and see everything not in just the camera view, but in the full perspective of the ship remains itself will help put everything within its proper context and do the interpretation of the wreck.
Yeah, Chris, do you know if photogrammetry was conducted on this wreck previously? Would there be a chance to do some interpretation to understand how it may have changed over time?
My understanding is that there hasn't been a lot of work done with this wreck. There's an early low-resolution side-scan sonar image of it, and then I think Nancy Foster was out in 2016 and got the multi-beam image that we're using, that the pilots are using for their navigational perspective. And other than that, just the Paula and Tane were talking about and Brian talking about being down on this wreck probably about 10, 12 years ago, just as a look-see dive, and I think that's about all that's been done with this particular wreck. So this is really we're getting the benefit of the true benefit of the technology here to get a thorough documentation of this wreck that we can then use as a baseline for being able to come out again and take a look at it. So we'll make sure that we make some good survey passes and some multi-beam passes over it as well for comparative purposes of what it looks like now versus what it had back in, I think 2016 was the date I saw on the original image. So for us too,
you can bring that up.
Yeah, so for us, it's invaluable for managing the resources as a wreck, monitoring its stability, just the same way it would benefit you all from the biological and ecological standpoint of looking at the change in species, the change of habitat, and how things are changing on the wreck.
Hey, if I could make a request for the ROV, if they could pan to the right again, or crab to the right in the collapsed space that was to the right of the one you're looking at now. There was a rather large fish. It almost looked like it was the hind, or maybe even that hogfish that we were looking for in the previous pass. Yeah, sort of coming into view now. It's sort of back in
I can say
in the upper third, now getting toward the middle.
I'm going to say, Todd, he's talking about, in there, zooming in to see one of the large fish that was, they thought they saw back in there.
Too. Yeah, there we go. We can get a clear view of that guy right there. That looks like a hind to me. I'll have to get some...
You try and get the lasers on it if we can get him to show up.
If you can, that'd be great. Yeah.
keep a watch and see where he goes. There, you see the larger one up at the top.
I do see the scamp up there. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a big one. Yeah.
It's like the
It's hard to know
the
if
broom tail.
if we've got multiple scamp on this site. Yeah, the broom tail. That's right. Yeah, your comment on looking at the multi-view and seeing how this wreck has changed, and Brian and Paula's comments when they were down here scuba diving and recalling much higher superstructure. I think Paula may have conducted some multi-view surveys even back in 2007 and 2008, and we'll have to review those, review the 2016, and it would be great if you guys could, at the conclusion of this dive, have the ship do a couple of passes over the top, and we'll definitely be able to compare the 2016 to this new survey at the resolution that we're getting on the past survey. I think we got to 1 meter resolution. We're definitely going to be able to make out changes in the topography around this wreck and see if the superstructure height has changed or if there's been changes in the sediment dynamics around it.
I guess so. Yeah, definitely. I can say and we were talking when we were in the galley, grabbing a quick bite. Just noticing how on the E.M. Clark and even the Monitor, how we had abundant sand tigers and the larger predators up and around, and we really haven't seen. We saw the one nurse shark and the one other, maybe a reef shark or something. It definitely wasn't a sand tiger, but that's about all I think I recall seeing. Is you think that's maybe because of the lack of height of the structure here, or are the sharks preferring something tall with more relief over the bottom?
That could be, Chris. It's hard to say because we saw several sand tiger sharks on the Monitor not 3 days ago. I was thinking maybe it's water temperature, but we're looking at temperatures on the bottom here at 75 degrees. That's plenty warm. We're in similar depths to the Monitor, so it's just puzzling to us why we're not seeing sand tigers on this site. It's just that one shark and the nurse shark that's passed over. But we know those sharks move. They're moving between different habitats, feeding, resting, reproducing. We just have to ask them. Maybe they'll tell us the truth. Getting some good views of the yellow-tailed snapper swimming by. Those are the silvery fish with the yellow tails. They're slender bodied. They're schooling up there. There's a spotted goldfish. They're swimming up there. Those are bottom-oriented fish that actually have whiskers on the bottom. They can sense smaller invertebrates, but maybe buried in sand, and they'll kick up the sand and nibble on the invertebrates that are buried. And then the ever-present vermilion snapper, these sort of pinkish small-bodied fish, the tomtate, the silver with the black tail. These are ever-present on the wrecks and reefs that are in these depths by the thousands.
You see a huge lionfish there showing up here right now.
Lionfish, that is. Yeah, look at that. That one's got some shoulders. Holy cow! I think the quote from Paula Whitfield earlier on was, "Boom, there it is, the basketball." That is it's got multiple foreheads.
I guess he has reached the size where he is an apex predator that I don't think anybody around here is going to bother him.
Any chance you get lasers on
He
it?
is. He can. Yeah, that'd be great if we get some lasers. We could. Yeah. Holy cow! That's like a almost 30 centimeter long lionfish. It looks like.
Yeah, he's looks like he's every bit of 30 centimeters.
That's beefy. Yeah. That is a meaty fish. Not scared at all of the ROV or a diver or any predator for that matter. Yeah, these lionfish, though, for those that are catching this for the first time, these lionfish are invasive species. They're actually native to the Indo-Pacific. So, and we think that their populations are well controlled in the Indo-Pacific, with predators maybe feeding on them when they're in smaller bodies and younger. But when they get to that size, they have venomous spines that are probably rather distasteful to large predators. and they have just exploded on the wrecks and reefs from North Carolina down through the Florida Keys, Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean. We still are trying to understand their impacts as an invasive species to the native population. So what sort of impacts are they having to the snapper and grouper populations? We still don't quite know that, but we know that they are very opportunistic and occupy a variety of structured habitats like shipwrecks. We've observed them in depths as greater than 1,000 feet, so depths that are 5 times where we are now. And while in some shallow reefs they're harvested actively by scuba divers, obviously when you get down to wrecks and reefs that are 200 feet here, where scuba divers aren't really going, you're just not going to see them harvested as readily. And unfortunately they're not caught on hook and line, and they're not captured in traps that are used by our fishery service for their surveys or by fishermen, recreational, commercial. So really the only way to get them out of here is through spearing or trap, or through spearing, and it's just challenging to keep up with them. So the best thing we can do, I think, is collect images like this to understand their numbers on this wreck here and the other shipwrecks and rocky reefs that we're going to be observing on this mission. Gather up those into the growing database of abundance and distribution measures for that species.
Like I say, and they've been here for about 20 years or so now, haven't they?
Yeah, they were actually, oddly, as a tropical species, they were first found here off of North Carolina by a group of scuba divers, and then counterintuitively have expanded to where we encountered them for the first time in 2012 in the Flower Garden Banks, which is a tropical reef system in the northwest Gulf of Mexico. And then they've just exploded and expanded through the entire Caribbean island system.
And say we're coming around here. Looks like they might be up here at the bow of the ship. I can say we're looking here. Yep. Yeah, we're looking at the at what would be the hawse pipes at the bow of the ship, with the anchor chain coming out of that. So yeah, we have the pointy end of the ship here. So we're at the bow.
Sorry, I might have missed that last part, Chris. So this is where the anchor chain would be deployed from the bow of the ship. Is that what I'm
Yes.
saying there?
Yeah. This would have been the hawse pipe or the hawse hole, where the one of the bow anchors would have been released from the forward area of the ship. One off of either side in the bow area. Like I say, and it looks like as we're coming around here to the other side, we're actually seeing one of the anchors. There, you can see the flukes of the anchors.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So yeah, that's a
very nice shot.
a great image there of the one of the anchors. They're still in position. Would not have been deployed. Looks like it's still right up against the side of the ship, as it would have been stowed.
Yeah, feed 2, that broad perspective with the color surrounding color from bright to blue is really quite spectacular. It's great. Gives us a really good understanding
would we be able to get
schooling jacks.
Would we be able to get 4K of some of that?
Did you copy that, Roland?
It's almost like the visibility is improving as this dive goes on. What has the current really dropped out since you guys started?
We look about 0.7 knots, I think, is what we're seeing on the on there. So it's dropped a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it does. It seems like it does seem like it's clearing up a little bit, and because as the pilots pull out with the video, we're getting a great perspective on what we're seeing there.
Yeah, and Avery, we are recording in 4K at this moment, so just letting you know that.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Chris, can you remind me again the size of this ship?
The length on the Malchace was, I think, 333 feet long, based on her statistics.
Yeah, got it.
So yeah, and she was carrying a cargo of sodium phosphates, or
soda ash.
Soda ash, right?
And also caustic soda.
Caustic soda, yeah.
They had 6 tanks of caustic soda up on deck, and they had 3,628 tons of soda ash stored below.
Can you go
This is a rookie question, but what is that? What is it, first of all? What is soda ash?
The soda ash is what is a combination of sodium, carbon, and oxygen. I think it's Na2CO3, I think, is the typical soda ash. And it's used a lot was used in some of the forging and smelting process. It is actually, ironically, something that we use in conservation, a variation of it called sodium sesquicarbonate that is used to create the alkaline solutions that we use for treating iron objects when they're in electrolytic reduction, to increase the conductivity and increase the pH in the conservation tank. So it's very similar to what we would use with that.
The soda ash and the caustic soda, is that sort of similarly used in the preservation process? I guess it probably wasn't used back in World War II in that same way.
No, it would have been used in the smelting and metalworking, I believe, and also soda ash would have also been used in, I believe, glass manufacture as well.
Great views. I missed what those were. David, did you see what those fish were? They almost look like barjacks, but not quite on feed 2.
I was looking at feed 1. I've just pulled it up to feed 2, and looks like I'm seeing some almaco jacks, and I don't see anything barjack reminiscent yet. Brian Deegan, are you back on the line?
Maybe not quite yet.
But I do see 3 or 4 lionfish in the center of the screen near the sand. And one of the things that's, oh wow.
Everything working for you, Avery?
Yes, I saw a fish that I didn't know what the identification was, and I think it's what you were talking about. I'm going to find it out.
Yeah, I can't tell if I don't want to take my eyes off and pick up my book. Store that one from memory.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
there's a really interesting one there in the middle of the screen right now. The patterning on it.
That's right. Yeah, the patterning on that scamp is really, really interesting.
Can we get 4K of feed 1 right now, please?
Yeah, there's 3 grouper in that field of view right now. If you
3
pan up and to the right. Yeah. I wonder if one of them's a yellowmouth.
It looks like the one on the bottom is.
He does, yeah. And then the patterning in the one in the middle.
Still has the broom tail, though.
Yeah, but I thought yellowmouths also had broomtails. Time to pull out the books, Avery. Here we go. One of us needs to keep looking at the camera, though.
And
I'm also seeing another spot fin hogfish in there. So one of the things that I'm starting to notice that there seems to be just observationally a lot more fish activity. They're milling around more quickly. Some of the jacks are coming down closer to the wreck structure. And I think this is the beginning of that crepuscular activity, that shift from daytime to nighttime.
I can say, Avery, I was just going to ask about that because it does seem like we're getting a lot more density and activity of the fish going on as we're changing times here to closer to evening.
I just want to point out for those of you watching feed 2 on the top 2 cameras, you can actually see that 100-foot long loose neutral tether that connects Yogi and Guru. So that's what's that line floating above the vehicle. And in fact, maneuvering like this is requiring the pilots to do what we call tether management and making sure that the ship is positioning Guru in such a way that Yogi can continue getting these really spectacular views.
I can say, and I didn't. Yeah, I didn't point it out before we panned away from it, but to the right we had a huge pile of the anchor chain that was piled up there to the right as we were beginning to pan over.
And Brian, to catch you up, we just saw several large grouper. We were wondering if some of them may be yellowmouth. I'm wondering if the ROV pilots might be able to pan back over that direction. If not, that's okay.
Which direction was it, Avery?
Yeah, I caught a glimpse. Go ahead, sorry.
It would be a turn to your right, I think. It was that area where we saw those 3 large fish, the 3 large grouper together.
The pilot's bringing the head back over.
And they may be gone.
When I did check in on the video feed, you guys were discussing jacks. I did observe a yellow jack.
Yep, I saw that
on the center
too.
field of view right there.
Yeah, and there's the big pile of anchor chain dead center as well that we're looking at.
Yeah.
So Brian, one grouper up at the top of that structure, one just went to the kind of middle right of it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I see. The glimpse I'm getting at right now suggests possibly a yellowmouth, but I need a little bit better view here. Scamp and yellowmouth are both pretty similar.
Yeah.
Say our pilot's zooming for you.
And it did look to me like there was yellow on its mouth with the broom tail, so that would be yellowmouth. Wow, that's a
Not
beautiful shot for
necessarily.
4K.
Yeah, that's a great shot. That's a great shot, Avery. Excellent. But yeah, I would say both scamp and yellowmouth actually both have yellow mouths in the corner there, so that's a great shot. But this is definitely a scamp for a couple of reasons. One, the anal fin, as you can see down there, is elongated and pointed. Plus, very similar. Like you hear the broomtail is usually a common name that a scamp is given. That also has a proper broomtail. I would call that a scamp. The coloration changes is really quite unique. A scamp will change color on a dime, and it'll go from that dark kind of charcoal brown almost color to that mottled color that we saw earlier, kind of that cat paw pattern that you saw throughout its body.
Hey everybody, this is Tane coming back from the Modern Ash Marine Sanctuary, and just enjoyed a lovely meal for the NOAA ship Nancy Foster that came back to a beautiful scene of incredible marine life.
Yeah, it is. Tony, what are they serving on board today?
Oh, well, let's talk a little bit about the NOAA ship Nancy Foster, because this is the pride of the fleet, the ship that can do it all. And, I can't speak enough to the enthusiasm and professionalism of the officers and crew aboard this ship. It's incredible. And the galley crew. If you keep your science team happy and the crew happy with nice full bellies, keeps morale up. Not that we need upkeep of morale, because we're seeing some incredible things, but tonight was some lovely fried chicken. I think they had some ribs as well, and then a lovely pecan pie for dessert that had me swooning just a little bit. So I'm enjoying that, and now looking at these incredible scenes. We're up at the bow here. I think we just saw some incredible shots of the hawse pipes, the anchor. We're moving down what's the sort of the starboard side of the vessel here, so you can see the side of the hull, and it's just incredible. And I may have missed it, but for the ecologist, we're seeing a change in behavior in some of the marine life now, and then that's getting a little later in the afternoon.
We think so, Tane. It seems like, anecdotally at least, there's a lot more activity. A lot of the larger predators that we typically see in the water column are starting to appear closer to the wreck structure for little bits of time. And there's just, the way I describe it is there's a lot of swirling motion, but wondering, Brian Deegan, if you can add some insight there into the fish behavior that we may be seeing as it nears dusk.
Yeah, thanks, Avery. I'm actually seeing on the fringes every now and then those kind of larger fish species that we were observing earlier in the day when the sun was a little bit higher, where they were kind of just leisurely moving throughout the water, or kind of moving a little bit with a little bit more purpose, a little bit more aggressive swimming behavior through the schools of the smaller fish, perhaps to maybe see if someone will jump out of their school so they can get a quick meal. I'm seeing that with the amberjack specifically and the almaco jack. We saw that earlier, perhaps with the barracuda, as it was swimming through a little bit quicker. Same thing with the scamp that I'm seeing. In some of the views, they're typically kind of leisurely following the ROV or holding tight to structure. But now I'm seeing them mingling around a little bit more. I'm hoping to see maybe some feeding behavior. I'm hoping to see maybe some of these other fish species moving off of the wreck. And what we're seeing now into the superstructure, a lot of those tomtates and vermilion and jackknife maybe coming out up on top of the wreck here. Perhaps not during our dive here, but definitely later on as night approaches.
What I'm seeing a slightly different view here on the ship, because I can have multiple views, and one of the cameras I have is facing up a little bit more, and you can see some of those larger fish now sort of holding station just above the hull, which is pretty cool. And I guess we're really facing more on the current facing side of the hull now versus where we were. Maybe sort of maybe we're some more the ocean facing side versus the protected side. Yeah, these are great views, though. This is wonderful.
So when I stepped off the call earlier, there was a discussion about possibly getting eyes on a speckled hind. Were we ever able to identify that?
We have not been able to identify it yet. But we've been keeping a close eye, and I'd love your help with that. And we can also go back and review that video and see if we can make a positive identification.
I thought I saw it again before those three big grouper came into view, but it was a fish that wasn't a scamp, and it crept back into a hole, and then we got distracted with big fat groupers. So
Yeah, understood.
it's been elusive. Yeah.
So we have a question in the YouTube chat, just noting that we've seen a lot of gorgeous fish on this wreck. Have we seen any sand tigers here today?
No, surprisingly, we've seen none sand tigers, and we were remarking on that when we first dropped in, and we've surveyed the entirety of this wreck. We've encountered one nurse shark, and then a unidentified pelagic shark, may have been a sandbar or other species, but no sand tigers, which is very curious. But it's kind of the nature of how we've conducted our ecological assessments. On some days you'll encounter dozens of them, and sometimes you'll see none. And it's just a ongoing mystery of how the sharks use these different habitats and may move between the different wrecks and natural rocky reefs.
You know, we should remind people we are on the shipwreck of the Malchace. We're south of Ocracoke, North Carolina. We're in about 205 feet of water on the seafloor. This is a World War II casualty. It went down in 1942. And it's just an incredible shipwreck that talks about the World War II's Battle of the Atlantic. Sank on April 9th, 1942 by the U-160. So again, this is an example of that worldwide war that came home to America's shores right here off North Carolina. So, and we're getting some fantastic shots of the marine life that are now calling this transport of war a home. Here's some great shots of just the marine life doing their thing.
Maybe scamp again, we think. Maybe yellowback. Probably scamp. Yeah, Avery Paxton, I see Carol Price has joined us on the chat, and I know she was looking for some sand tigers to comment on for her spot a shark, and yeah, we've come up blank today, Carol.
Yeah, hi Carol. Thanks so much for joining in. Like Chris said, we haven't, seen any sand tiger sharks so far today. We did see one shark, and we didn't get a good glimpse at it of it. Cat has my tongue, but it did look like possibly a sandbar shark. So it'll be interesting to go back and review that footage. It kind of came into the right-hand side of our screen, and we couldn't get a full-on view of it. But lots of really interesting fish species on the wreck. We're seeing a lot of jackknife fish in the highest abundance that a lot of folks who have been diving on this wreck before and on many others in the area have ever seen. And right now we're seeing a lot of interesting fish behavior, a little bit bolder movements, as Brian Deegan was saying, as we're approaching the dusk time period.
Yeah, and obviously we're getting later.
I know you've been.
Sorry, I was just gonna note that we are getting later in the evening, and we are noticing the water column starting to change in its lighting. And luckily, we bring our own lighting with the ROVs. We have a dimmable light bank. Oh, there's a shark.
Interject?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Can I interject?
If the
Shark
ROVs,
on the left-hand
there we
side?
go. Yeah. There we go. Sorry, not to interrupt.
No, go.
To capture that.
Always happy to talk about sharks.
Maybe we can follow it. It looked to me in profile like it could have been a sand tiger shark because its tail had that shape, but not positive.
Coming up on its tail right now. Well, Carol, thanks for joining
Looking
the call.
like
I guess you're the one that brings the sharks.
First sand tiger
There
shark
you go.
today.
Yes, that is a sand tiger. And I can't get a good glimpse, but I'm not seeing claspers from this angle, so it looks like that is probably a female. But if we get a side angle, which I'm not sure if we can because of the speed the shark's cruising at, but one of the things we can do is we can identify individual sharks using the brown spot patterns that appear along their sides. Just like you can identify a human based on their fingerprint. It's a unique signature for that shark. And the North Carolina Aquarium runs a program called Spot a Shark USA, where they can take photos and videos of sand tiger sharks and identify the individual shark and then track its movement over time through successive images to understand more about how they're using some of the habitats.
Got a question in the chat here about from Joe. Did you see the spare prop in the sand off the wreck? And I'm not sure if I don't know if others have experience with where that propeller might be. We've surveyed a good portion, if not all, of this wreck from stem to stern, but I'm not sure if we anyway noted the presence of a propeller off in the sand. Although we have stated on the structure itself mostly.
Yeah, I don't. This is Tane from the Modern Natural Sanctuary. I don't think we've quite seen it yet, but we have been staying quite close to the hull, really, to make these observations in the marine life. So, we have not seen the propeller yet, but we will keep our eyes open for it.
There's that model pattern you were talking about, Brian. That's sort of that much more cat's paw instead of the muted colors that we saw in that previous scan.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot there. And then just above him here, we're getting a good view at a pair of reef butterfly fish, usually always in pairs. Beautiful fish to get a look at, and a nice yellowtail swimming by there. I think, though, that isn't Mr. Yellowtail Snap. I think that might be our yellow goatfish still. Hard to tell.
Yeah, it definitely seems the case. Maybe you've experienced this diving too, Brian, especially in the Florida Keys and tropical reefs during this crepuscular period. The big grouper kind of come up and elevate off the bottom. The jacks have always been swimming around. Maybe they're behaving a little bit more differently, but the grouper seem to be coming out of the woodwork right now.
Yeah, I expect more. I expect to see a few more gag to come up out of their kind of hidey holes, and these scamp are definitely moving around up in the water column a lot more. It's nice to see.
So again, what we're looking at here is the World War II freighter Malchace in 205 feet of water. Pardon me. We're off the coast of North Carolina, south of Ocracoke, and this is the freighter that actually went down in World War II, sunk by the U-160. So we're actually looking at the starboard side of the hull, which is the right-hand side, and that's actually that flat part of the hull that comes up out of the water, straight up. And as we kind of come down here, this is part of the lower hull too. And as the ROV slides to the right, that's towards the bow, the front of the ship, where earlier we saw the hawse pipes and anchor. So, just beautiful. Nice. Oh, saw a little activity there. So for our ecologists, we're sort of seeing some of the larger fish that are darting through the smaller fish. Is that some sort of behavior for feeding or something else?
Absolutely, Tony. I think they're trying to break the school up and see if one of those delicious little tomtates breaks off from the school, and we may be fortunate enough to see some feeding behavior. They're already kind of pushing through those schools pretty actively.
Oh, and it looks like we're about to see there's a whole cluster of lionfish here too.
Oh my! Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it is looking to be a pride of lionfish right there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holy cow! Pan to their left, and they just keep going.
Just keep going.
Already lost count. Ran out of fingers.
Oh, there's even more. It's a fleet of them.
Oh boy.
Oh, look at this.
And we have a shark coming in as well. Looks like we're going to get a beautiful glimpse of the spots along the side. And this is a female again, perhaps the same individual that we saw just a few minutes ago, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
So
really
that was
cool
a
footage
sand
on
tiger
the
shark.
quad view.
Again,
Really cool.
There's that
Really
pride
cool
of
view on that
language.
quad view, with a swarm of fish around it, like flies on a pig, like we described earlier yesterday. That's fun.
I mean, we get 4K, please, of the upper right-hand quad view feed that shows all of the jackknife, the ship structure with the amberjack jack and the Almaco jack activity.
Yeah, so, Chris, what is the proper nomenclature for a grouping of lionfish? Is there one, or is it just a school of fish?
I think maybe technically fishes are found in schools, but I think I like to joke around that it's the pride of lionfish, like a lion pride.
I can say I like that as an alternative.
Yeah.
And for our narrators, Roland was telling me that the 4K camera on the 4-screen feed is the bottom left one. On the main feed. The one
Okay.
you're seeing on the main feed right now, that's our 4K camera.
Okay, is there a
So
way to make the broader
got it.
perspective the 4K?
Yeah, apparently that's as wide as it goes because it's a different camera system than the HD systems you're seeing on
Got it.
those wider.
Understood. Thank you.
Can we get confirmation that the feed in the upper right of the quad view is being recorded?
There's a beautiful fish that's swimming through that's red with a white stripe and a yellow tail. What is that?
That's called a spot fin hogfish.
Beautiful.
That we were seeing, and we've seen a few of those today. Brian Deegan was talking earlier this afternoon about what their colorations mean and how they can change slightly during different phases of the fish's life. Brian, do you want to add a few details there?
Yeah, I think, Tommy, the individual that we saw swim through right there looked to me like a male at the terminal phase spot fin. Oh, look at that. Oh,
look at
everybody's scattering there. Some more feeding activity there in the background. And they'll cruise. Looks like somebody just got eaten there. An Almaco jack just ate a smaller fish. And those Almaco jack are pretty aggressive, pushing those tontates around, trying to make somebody make a mistake.
Yeah, so we're actually seeing...
And Tony, may we get confirmation that what we're seeing in our upper right-hand side of the quad view, the broad angle with the deep blue background and colors popping, that is being recorded?
Yes, roger that. It is definitely being recorded right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's some beautiful shots on that particular screen. I think maybe just as an enthusiast of biology and ecology, that I think it's really interesting to see this behavior happening right now, sort of this hunting and feeding behavior. I've never really seen it before, but it's really, maybe that's some of the power that we're able to do with the ROV and the telepresence is not only can we see it live, but with you all on the shore seeing for the first time too on the seafloor with us at this particular site. But I think it's fascinating.
Yes, and that's a great point. And it's oftentimes hard for us to get these observations, not only because of how deep sites like the Malchace are, but also because we don't want divers to be in the water right around the time that it's going to become dark. If anything goes awry, we need to be able to see divers at the surface. And so getting these types of observations is pretty rare. And I think the types that we'll get later, hopefully in the mission, some night footage as well, will be really revealing.
Looks like we've got a shark coming into frame here.
Oh, great spot.
Oh, is that our nurse shark, maybe?
It looks like it, Mr. Nurse Shark coming in. There's a yellow jack there. Also, right before the nurse shark came into view, I thought I saw a scamp kind of swimming up in the water column. It looked almost bicolor, which suggests perhaps some sort of behavioral change as well.
You know, I thought I saw a bicolor earlier. Would they be bicolor? Is that how quickly can they change color?
Fairly quickly. I think they can change within seconds, if not. And I've always liked to think that it's based off their mood, whether they're feeding, schooling, mating, what have you. So, or just kind of. I've even seen a lot of fish changing color when they've gone to a cleaning station and relaxing.
We're going to move the ROV just a little closer to the hull here. We're just slowly coming up, but it looks like there's a lot of interesting activity a little closer to the hull with that large overhang that might be interesting to take a look at. I can see fish darting in and out of there pretty quickly. Oh, there's the shark.
Wow, and so I think I think that was incredible. For those of you who are on the line earlier, you saw a nurse shark, possibly the same individual, resting in the sand underneath part of the wreck. And to contrast that sort of behavior to what we just saw, it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, he has definitely changed things up. He's actively moving about the wreck site with purpose, looking for some dinner, I'd say.
Yeah, some more great views.
You can also notice too, as everything moved around, the schools of fish that we were observing earlier. All of these tomtates and all of these vermilion snapper that were, just resting or sitting in these schools, hunkered up under these ledges and system, are now not doing that. As you can tell, they are getting pushed around, moved around constantly. And I can. Oh, there we go. Look at that nice bicolor scamp going through. Absolutely. Look at that.
I think what we're seeing now is a great testament how these ships have really turned into a habitat. Even though this one's quite different than the other two wrecks we've been to, USS Monitor and the tanker E.M. Clark, that this one's a little bit lower lying, but, I mean, what we're seeing here, I think, this afternoon, this early evening, is incredible.
I agree, and to use some of your language, it's a testament to how these sites are living shipwrecks, and they form oases for marine life. And it's really incredible to me to think that this ship is, I think approximately 333 feet long by 48 wide. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a relatively small area of structured habitat that is supporting all of these fish and other organisms growing on the structure. It's just such an island of life.
Oh, it's like
There's
a crab
cute
there.
spider crab. Yeah, moving along, probably about ready to continue feeding on that algae. Got a little hat. You probably think that's his camouflage. You can't see me. I'm just algae.
And I have to say, as a
very still.
scuba diver, I love seeing this extra activity we're seeing at night when, most of us aren't on these shipwrecks, like we were saying. It's much more difficult to dive, safety-wise. Things are usually we want to do things in the daytime. It's much more difficult to do at night, and to see these activities happening now as a diver, man, it's really fun to watch. So a question for our ecologists, as we're watching, I guess, the larger fish now sort of pushing through, kind of muscling their way through and breaking up some of the schools, are we finding that, oh, look at that, that's beautiful. Are we finding that a lot of the smaller fish are trying to hug the wreck a bit more while the bigger fish are trying to bully them and push them out?
Yeah, I think we're at this transition period with the lighting that some of these smaller fish, they may be wanting to get up into the water column and maybe feed on plankton, and they're just trying to hedge their bets a little bit, because if you look into the quad view, the upper end of the quad view, there's a school of spadefish that's coming around the tall superstructure, but then there's other prey fish that are up a little bit higher, not as closely tucked around the wreck as they were during the day earlier on in this dive. So I think we may start seeing a transition still, although my predictions have been wrong on this before.
And there was also a sand tiger shark in the black and white feed that we have on feed 2 that is nearby. And again, for those who aren't familiar, spadefish, the fish that Chris was just pointing out, they have a spade of playing card shape, and they have black vertical bars along their body. And we're getting a great glimpse on feed 1 and feed 2 of some soft corals that are kind of swaying in the water moving by.
And I should remind folks that you're joining us here live from the seafloor at 205 feet. We're on the shipwreck Malchace, which is a World War II freighter, sunk in 1942 as part of that Battle of the Atlantic, sunk by a German U-boat. You're joining us here with the Valor in the Atlantic Telepresence Project. It's a partnership between NOAA, the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration. And we're able to bring a diverse series of experts from around the world to come join us and tell these stories. And we've got some very special people on the line with us. On board the ship is Chris Sutherland with the North Carolina Office of State Archaeology. He's the state of North Carolina's underwater archaeologist. My name is Tani Casserly. I'm with NOAA's Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. We protect the iconic Civil War ironclad Monitor. And on the line from NOAA as well, from the National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science, we've got ecologist Brian Deegan, Chris Taylor, and Avery Paxton. And we couldn't have done this without our primary partner in this mission is the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, GFOE. They are making this all possible what you're seeing now. These remotely operated vehicles, these underwater robots, they're controlling, they build them, they design them, the pilots are piloting them and bring this to the special place. And they're also using satellite technology that they brought aboard to beam this live to you wherever you are in the world. And Dan, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. So again, GFOE, Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, managing the technical support and expertise for this mission, everything from the ROVs that are actually on the bottom up to the telepresence and satellite communication capability, able to broadcast this live footage from the seafloor to you with minimal delay. And again, you might have heard me mention it earlier, but everything that's happening on the seafloor is reaching your screen at home in less than 8 seconds. Really incredible and a really powerful tool to be able to expand the expertise that we bring into these missions. So we follow a similar model on the NOAA ship Okeanos Explorer with a much larger and deeper rated ROV system. And this team has operated those vehicles out in the middle of the Pacific, hundreds of miles from shore. So, but we're very proud to be here today supporting this mission off of North Carolina, looking at all of these cultural, historical, and ecological sites of significance in and around the Monitor Marine Sanctuary.
Yeah, it's incredible the partnership we have here, and again, GFOE making it possible. The other entity that makes this possible is the vessel we're on. We are on the NOAA ship Nancy Foster, part of the NOAA White Fleet. We like to think of it as the pride of the NOAA fleet, the ship that can do it all, and it's due to the expertise and professionalism of the officers and crew of this ship that has made this all possible. We've been dealing with high currents, winds, and waves, so the ship has to compensate that for everything they do on the surface, and then the other side of the team is GFOE. They compensate for that on the bottom, and the collaboration is amazing to see.
Yeah, and thank all of you for joining today and watching along with us.
Archaeologists, what are we seeing here in front of us? Is this part of the wreck? Are we looking at
It's honestly,
biology or archaeology? What's the vote?
I'm going to say the things that look stringy, the stringy things, are biology, because usually man-made objects are going to have straight lines or true curves to them. So that appears to me. But Chris Sutherland, what do you think?
I was going to second that, Tane. It looks biological to me, not manufactured. Because I cannot think of something right off the top of my head that would have been like that aboard ship.
Well, I guess it's back on us. Thanks, guys. Okay, ecologists.
I was going to suggest it almost looked sponge-like, some sort of sponge. I am the wrong person to identify that, but considering the shape and the look of it, it looked almost like a sponge.
And we are in Jackknife Central right here.
I got a good question for the ecologist. We've seen so many species of fish here and some of these larger guys. Which one of these species we've seen so prevalent here are sort of would be attractive for the fishermen or the spear fishermen that we have that's so popular in sports off North Carolina?
I'll let Brian start that.
I'll take a stab at that. First, I'll answer. There's a question that popped up in the chat. What is the whitefish with that black stripe along its dorsal side? That is the jackknife fish. It's a drum species that we are seeing quite a few of on this
field of view right now, though.
That looks like a scamp backing up. But yeah, unique or specific fish that are targeted in this particular area, and that what we've seen here, I would say, would be the almaco jack, the amberjack that's in the upper water column, but then also the scamp species in the gag grouper, the vermilion snapper, the red or pinkish fish that are schooling with these tomtates that are up in the water column, are probably the majority of fish species that people target. That being said, if you drop a hook with some bait on this wreck, you are more than likely going to catch one of those tomtates, probably first if you have a fish dropper rig, a little double dropper rig with some squid or shrimp on it. If you have a larger bait, I'm assuming you would pretty quickly probably hook up with one of these amberjacks or almaco jacks that we're seeing.
I have a question. Again, this is Tane from the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. We've talked a lot about the scamp fish, and basically, I've got a junior ecology decoder ring. Is the word scamp? We might think if somebody is a scamp. Is that because of the behavior of the scamp fish, or is there perhaps some other reason? Oh, there's a nice shark.
Good question, Tony. I don't know the origin of the name, but yeah, they were seeing a nice sand tiger there. And finally, one of the other species that I have not seen a lot of is that schooling fish above it. Those are a scad or a Decapterus species that make up another kind of large component of the biomass, typically on these artificial or these wrecks and artificial reefs off North Carolina. But we haven't really seen a lot of them. Maybe they've been up in the water column and we haven't been able to observe them, but they are enjoying the comforts and ride along with Mr. Sand Tiger there, hopefully to maybe deter some of the amberjacks from coming in and taking a swipe at them.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. That was fascinating to see all those fish around the sand tiger shark. Is that type of behavior normal, so they can feel like they're going to hang around the big guy so you can't get me?
Yeah, I would say, those smaller schooling fishes definitely take advantage of any size or area or fish or structure to school on or hold tight to. A large sand tiger cruising around wreck is a perfect example of that. You'll typically see those schooling scads hold tight to those sand tigers on these wrecks.
So the same type of behavior I
And
did
one of
when
the
I was 8
other-
years old.
A lot of vermilion there, full of vermilion.
One of the other things that we've seen in viewing shallower shipwrecks with shallow water remotely operated vehicles is that oftentimes when you have sharks like sand tigers on particular wrecks, you're going to have a greater variety of reef fish in the vicinity. And so that's a really good testament to the role that some of these large predators can play in structuring the community of fish that we see on these wrecks. So phrased another way, sand tiger sharks tend to be related to us seeing a higher variety of fish on some of these shipwrecks.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I believe we're seeing that propeller that was pointed out before. Have we seen it? We've got the propeller here. And this is a great one, too, for Art and Roland, if we capture this in 4K as well. It's another charismatic part of the shipwreck.
We also have a new species in the water column there, Chris. Good point out, but I'm seeing a African Pompano, another carangid or jack species that frequent our wrecks and reefs offshore North Carolina. Good sight there.
Yeah, I agree. Once you get back to this great footage of the propeller too, be able to get on that imaging sonar, that's rectified in two-dimensional space. So the crew's going to be able to get very precise measurements of the size of the propeller, the shape, the characteristics of it, to be able to capture that in that imaging sonar again, that blue view that's basically behaving like an acoustic camera, sending out 10 pings a second over 140 degrees field of view. It looks like it's going about 12 meters away from the ROV, so really getting a good perspective and able to capture that imagery to get some dimensions of that structure.
Yeah, and that's another fantastic technology that GFOE has brought to the table here, because we could have poor visibility and not be seeing anything, and that blue view multi-beam is what's going to give us that information. So helpful with navigation, of course, but also for science to document the site if you don't have the visual clarity to be able to actually see the subject.
Yeah, there's a dark body, looks like a grouper that's been swimming around, really dark colored. It doesn't look like a scamp. Yeah, there it is. Oh, maybe it is. It's smaller than the other ones we've been observing, though.
Yeah, that's a great example right there. That's a great example right there of a scamp being, the two different color variations and how they can go from that gray cat's paw to that brownish kind of muted color.
Yeah. You just changed that
out there. Yep, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, this is great footage. We have scamp, we have lionfish, we have stripey fish.
Those water columns
stripey fish
are pretty.
Well, with my junior ecology decoder ring, I figured that was a scientific term, but I was waiting for the experts to step in to clarify.
I think we're
Jackknife fish.
back your ecology badge.
Jackknife fish. Roger that. Jackknife fish.
Good job. Good recovery.
I can say, yeah, Chris, I used to, until I started hanging out with some marine ecologists with the state of North Carolina, I used to, say my category for fish were fat fish, flat fish, dangerous fish, and tasty fish. And they could overlap.
That's good. I like that.
Speaking of flattish fish, I think there might have been a stingray at the base of the structure we were just looking at, if folks are interested in going back.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you can see it on your feed, but there was a sand tiger shark
Avery.
that just swam by.
Yes, sand tiger shark on the right-hand side.
And to point out, too, we are at the stern of the vessel now, which is the end, and I believe that was actually the tip of the stern that we just looked at there, the sort of very narrow knife edge of the vessel.
Tony, will you let the ROV pilots know if they're looking for the stingray? It was further to the left of where they are right now. So
Right.
it was right up against the base of the ship where it rests on the sand.
Roger that. We're turning
Yeah,
down.
I think somewhere...
Was it in the sand? Do we need to move forward just a little bit?
I'm not sure. I've lost my orientation. Brian, do you have a good sense?
Yeah, there was some yellow on the structure there. It was just to the left of that yellow. So the direction I'm seeing right now, if we were to pan to the right, it should be right up against the structure, right to our right now.
Might have swum away.
Possible it moved.
There was also a school, and when I thought I saw that stingray, there was also a school of another new species that at least I saw. It was either a purple reef fish or blue chromis that I think we saw.
And I don't mean to jump in, but
I
I
concur.
believe what we're seeing is the rudder there now, too. So this is another good one for our film team. Another iconic piece of the ship if we capture that. But yes, that's the rudder. We still haven't seen, other than that propeller in the sand, we haven't seen propellers attached yet to the hull. So we'll keep an eye out for that, but we're definitely in exactly the right spot. And we'll also keep the eye out for any sort of stingray. More great views here. We are on the seafloor, 205 feet down off North Carolina, just south of Ocracoke offshore, on the shipwreck Malchace, which is a World War II freighter sunk by a German U-boat, part of the Battle of the Atlantic story. This is the first time that we've actually had an ROV on the site, which is exciting for us, for historians and archaeologists, to get this prolonged, very safe view to document the ship, but also, to look at the marine life and the habitat, too, with an unlimited time at the bottom. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, Tony, it really emphasizes when we're doing this how much any type of marine research, whether it's historical or biological, truly is multidisciplinary. We've got a whole crew of engineers here, as well as historians, archaeologists, marine ecologists, marine biologists, that we all have something that we can see and interpret and learn from by being on this particular site.
And it looks like we might have a gudgeon there. Chris, do you think that's a gudgeon? You can see in the bottom left there.
It looks like it is.
A pintle and gudgeon connection is oh yeah, there you go. And there's the pintles there.
Yeah, there are the
left.
pintles there to the left as part of the rod, and the gudgeon hole or the strap that would have been attached. So yeah, it looks like we've got pieces and parts of our of the rudder from the ship that's starting to come apart here on the bottom.
And this design has been been used by ships for hundreds and hundreds of years. Even back in the days of sail, they used this very similar design. We've just switched material, essentially, from wood to iron to steel. These are some of the things that we as historians and archaeologists can go down on a shipwreck site and note what type of rudder structure it has, how many connection points, how big it is, and oftentimes those little clues that seem mundane, maybe they help lead to the identification of the vessel. But in this case, we know this is the Malchace, the World War II freighter, but if it's an unknown site, these are some of those clues as we look at this crime scene on the bottom that's untouched that can help us identify what it is and help unearth that history.
Tane, if an ecologist correctly spells gudgeon, do we get an archaeology badge?
You do. You get a little coin and a plastic badge.
Okay.
We'll bring you a challenge coin from the Nancy Foster. How about that, Chris?
Very good.
All right, folks. Well, we are coming towards the end here of our day in broadcast. We're just going to back up and get some final views of the shipwreck here as we back up. But maybe we can get some closing thoughts as we've seen some pretty incredible things today. Much different shipwreck site than we've seen in the last few days. We were first at the ironclad USS Monitor, much different sort of profile in the water column. The E.M. Clark, which is gigantic, nearly 500 feet long, maybe 65 feet up into the water column. And now we're at the Malchace, which is a bit more low-lying, but we're seeing a huge diversity of marine life and all sorts of behavior. So I think it's incredible. But, Chris, Avery, and Brian, what's your thoughts today after being to the other shipwreck sites and seeing what we've seen today?
Well, I'll start off. Go ahead, Brian. You go.
Yeah, I'll take a quick stab at some of the things I noticed. That seeing, I had the opportunity to dive on this site about 12 years ago, and I think I made mention of it earlier today. Was just the overall difference in the height of the overall structure. There's some definite changes that have occurred in this whole wreck underwater over time, and it'll be interesting to compare perhaps some of the multi-beam data from years past to what you guys are capturing hopefully tonight. So that's one thing that stood out. But what a great treat it was to observe some of this behavior during the dusk time crepuscular period. It's been a real treat and really appreciate it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Brian. And I have to say that this has been remarkable footage. We didn't think we were going to be able to, based on the currents that have been experienced over the past couple of days, this has just been a miracle to get down here and see this wreck, to almost completely survey it, to encounter the varied structure. As Brian pointed out, this wreck has probably changed. These environments are dynamic. These habitats are dynamic. And we look forward to making those comparisons with previous surveys that we've conducted. But the observations that we have today are giving us really good footage, highest quality video that are going to allow us to characterize, categorize the fish, and make some good counts and characterize the communities that are here. Avery?
I completely agree with everything Brian and Chris said, and I think to take a broader perspective, one of the main messages from today is just how, even with the changes to the shipwreck structure over time, it is just an incredible home for a diversity of marine life. Today we saw small bait fish like the silvery scad we saw towards the end. We saw reef fish. We saw large predators like jacks and sharks, and all sorts of beautiful organisms like coral and sponges and crabs that are using the structure of the wreck itself. So again, these are islands of marine life, oases for marine life, if you will, and I think the fusion between the ecology and the history or archaeology makes it just such a special experience. And so with that, I guess, Tane, closing thoughts from you, perhaps?
Well, maybe we'll get...
can we get an idea of those fish from Brian?
Yeah.
What just swam by the screen there?
I was going to ask, that was a different type of fish than we've seen.
Yep.
That was a fantastic school of African pompano. They are a beautiful silvery carangid or jack. They typically live up in the water column like we're seeing now. Mixed in with them also looks to be some rainbow runners. So a really nice treat as we head to the surface.
Yeah, some sentinels guiding us to the surface. And maybe because this is a shipwreck with such a strong international history to it of how the war came to our shores in World War II, maybe Chris Southerly, what do you think about what we've seen today and the story we're telling and just, this beautiful dive we just did?
Like I said, this has been just amazing conditions here on the with a little bit of current running, just under a knot. The pilots did an exceptional job navigating us around the wreck and getting us some great images. But it's what we're seeing here is, Tana, you alluded to it before, is it's like we're looking at a crime scene when we look at an archaeological site and trying to take all the little pieces of evidence and information and looking at what